Fort Worth Mayor Mattie Parker, thank you so much.
Sure, Jack. Good to be with you.
Nice to be with you. You are running for re-election. Seems like it's been a very fast 2 years.
It has been, yeah, every 2 years. Here we go again.
And why are you running?
I think for a variety of reasons. First of all, the job's not done yet. I've really loved being mayor. No 2 days are the same. Candidly, it's been an adventure. Some days have been really hard. But I feel like I'm hitting my stride, and I'm really thankful that the voters have entrusted the last year and a half with me, and I'm excited about what's to come in 2023 and beyond.
Why should voters re-elect you?
Well, I think it's not just about me serving as mayor, but this body of council, the work that Fort Worth is doing. You know, I'm really kind of chair of the board, right? I have a CEO and a city manager. I'm really proud of the city management team to help us get to this place. But I think voters should give us another 2 years to see us continue the work that we're doing. Everything in really a sound city budget, what it looks like to invest in the next opportunity for jobs and economic development, and really run a world-class city. This last budget really reflected our priorities of being the cleanest and safest city in the country. I'm sure you do as well on behalf of CBS, but me as well, traveling this country, seeing what other communities are looking like. And while we do have our fair share of issues, don't get me wrong, we're not perfect and we're striving to be better. We in Fort Worth are in incredibly great shape right now. And it's been an honor to get to see some of our improvements get made in the last 2 years, but I also know we've got more work to do.
What are your proudest accomplishments in this first term, this first year and a half?
I think my inside the building, remember when we got elected, we had to deal with redistricting. I have joked many times over, I will not be here again in 10 years to go through that process again. It's rough. There's a lot of emotion involved about what the district should look like. We were adding 2 additional seats. But if you remember, we got to a 9-0 decision on behalf of the city of Fort Worth, which is kind of unheard of when it comes to redistricting. I think everyone walked away a little upset and a little happy, which is probably a good sign of a compromise. So I think about inside the building, we really worked alongside our police department to continue to drive down violent crime and our crime rate in the city of Fort Worth. We're trending in the right direction. There are still heartbreaking moments in our community, just like this past weekend when we lost a 16-year-old student at Paschal High School. And we have to continue to be vigilant and pay attention to what it looks like to have a crime rate that goes down and really a specific focus on youth gun violence that I know other cities are really grappling with. We've had some really exciting moments, things like the Texas A&M Fort Worth campus expansion announcement, and additional news last week, of course, about that campus as well. Watching TCU go to the national championship, why should that matter to a city? Putting Fort Worth on a national stage has been incredibly exciting for us, and I have been really honored to get to be along the ride of that as well. If you think about across the city, the other jobs and opportunities that are coming to Fort Worth, we continue to be one of the fastest growing cities in the country. And when you talk to residents that are moving here for the first time, the number one thing they tell you is quality of life. And so as city leaders, we have to pay attention to that. This last budget, as I mentioned before, we passed really to be a clean and safe city. What does that look like? Well, you have to make investments, everything for, cleaning up community streets, street sweepers, investments in litter abatement, but also paying attention to where a lot of cities are really falling short, specifically around homelessness. And I think in Fort Worth, we're doing the right things by listening to residents and making measured improvements and making sure your tax dollars are at work in the right ways.
You mentioned a lot,
Yeah.
so I want to go through it a little bit. Let's just talk about crime and violent crime and that tragic case at the Whataburger involving that teenager. Does the city have a crisis when it comes to youth gun violence?
Sure. No, I don't think we have a crisis. And I say that because I understand what's happening in other cities across the country when their homicide rate is double or triple what we see in Fort Worth, despite even a lower population. But that doesn't diminish the fact that one member of our community, especially a member of our community that's a teenager, losing their life to senseless gun violence. Like, this is a complicated issue. I do know that the work we're going to do alongside Tarrant County and United Way with the 1 Second Collaborative, which we actually have a briefing today at work session about this work. Those types of collective impact agency work, pulling people together, will have a difference. But at the end of the day, we need families to step up. We need neighborhoods to step up and recognize that this is an epidemic across this country. Access to guns, especially in the black market among youth, is too accessible. And the last thing is these kids are desensitized in a way that's incredibly troubling for this generation. Maybe it's video games, maybe it's social media. I don't have the answer to that. But the fact that a young man lost his life on Friday, what used to be a parking lot brawl when maybe a kid had a bloody nose and went home to his parents and had to deal with the principal on Monday, now no longer has his life. His family doesn't have him alongside. And so I think, and for those respects, we have to pay more attention to this. And this is just one case that we're dealing with. This is a reality across the city of Fort Worth and really across the United States. And when you talk to other mayors and city leaders, we're all dealing with a lot of the same things. Fortunately for us in Fort Worth, we have a few things going for us. We've made the right investments in law enforcement and police. We put over 50 sworn officers in this last budget. We have a community that largely does support our police department, that has taken the mentality we can be pro-police and pro-community at the exact same time. And then third is really what I mentioned before. We're pulling together partnerships between nonprofits, NGOs, other law enforcement agencies. I'm very excited to work alongside our new district attorney, Phil Sorrells, to really focus on youth gun violence in a way that's meaningful, that makes a difference for families, and can end any senseless violence we're seeing in Fort Worth.
And so you're pleased with the trend lines as it relates to violent crime in the city and your police department's efforts?
I am, and I think our police chief, Neil Noakes, and his entire command staff are vigilant, continuing to update us along the way and where they think things are. They know the resources that they need. It's not just about men and women in uniform, but it's also about technology and the resources they need to do their jobs. And again, it's not just law enforcement. You really have to have prevention techniques that I think other communities are really understanding. To keep our trend lines going in the right direction, we'll continue to have to work really hard. The Fort Worth Safe Initiative continues. The way they report out statistics is working. We're seeing a lot of downward trends where we want to see them. But when you have heartbreaking incidents like this past weekend, you realize your work is very far from done.
I wanted to ask you about homelessness. You brought it up. I know in a lot of cities we're seeing encampments. And so how bad is the issue here in Fort Worth, and what is the city doing to prevent homelessness and deal with and help the homeless who you have?
So the City of Fort Worth is working in partnership with other folks, most importantly Tarrant County Homeless Coalition and our COC, our Continuum of Care Board, all the nonprofits that work with our homeless community in the social services space. The Fort Worth Police Department and the Fort Worth Fire Department have worked very closely with MedStar and MHMR. That's important because oftentimes when you're dealing with people that are chronically homeless, that have been on the streets for a longer period of time, they have co-occurring issues. It's not just as simple as telling them to move on or move into shelters. You have to have mental health issues or substance abuse issues. We've done a phenomenal job creating these multidisciplinary teams to really serve community members that are most vulnerable, including those that are chronically homeless. How do you get people off the streets? You have to build permanent supportive housing. The City of Fort Worth invested over $26 million just since I've been mayor to build these units. These are wraparound services for people. They're incredibly effective, and it will make a difference long term. We did have a crisis this summer, and we talked about it openly, especially among our youth and family homelessness and what it looks like to really serve families differently. But I'm proud to tell you that we're also working for permanent supportive housing for families as well, to make sure we don't have to put any child at a shelter at Salvation Army down on Lancaster, making sure they immediately find homes. Affordability is a crisis across the country. And so I think this next session, I know that the legislature is really going to talk about housing affordability in Texas cities. I'm optimistic about that conversation as well, because we're not the only city dealing with this. But I do know when you compare us to other large cities of similar size, Fort Worth is winning this battle on homelessness, and we treat people humanely. We want them off the streets. This is about human dignity. You don't want encampments, because think about the individual, the human being that is living in squalor that way. But at the same time, you have to recognize this is all their belongings. This is where they consider their home. They don't have a roof over their head. So when the City of Fort Worth receives notice of an encampment, we treat those people with respect. We give them plenty of notice to understand why they can't live in an encampment, why we're going to move their belongings and clean up that area. And we have made millions of dollars in investment to really focus on this issue to make sure Fort Worth is the cleanest and safest city.
In the last year, I mean, how many people would you say you've been able to move to these single homes with the wraparound services?
Yeah, well, you think about every investment we've made in these units, every single one of them is currently filled at a capacity for PSH. So the number of units really is over 150, continues to grow in the last year. I've got 2 projects right now I think we could get pretty close to in the next several months to keep people off the streets. It's the housing first model to keep people out of shelter beds and provide services that really provide them the most important needs that they have, those acute needs that they may have. So I don't have an exact number to give you. I can get it to you later to make sure you're reporting accurately. But And again, this is not just a city of Fort Worth. This is not just a mayor's job. The reason Tarrant County is most successful is because we work alongside the city of Arlington, our Tarrant County leadership, and all of the nonprofits that are doing this work. The one thing I do think that City of Fort Worth has done uniquely is understanding what the dignity of work looks like and how the City of Fort Worth specifically can play a role in that. And CBS may have reported on the Upspire program and our partnership with Presbyterian Night Shelter. So Upspire has really gained a lot of positive notoriety for the right reasons. These are formerly homeless individuals that needed the opportunity to get back to work, get back on their feet, while also going through programs and social service work at Presbyterian Night Shelter. So the City of Fort Worth, led by Brandon Bennett and our Code Compliance Department, said, hey, we have a litter abatement problem in this city. We need people to help us and employ them to do so. We partnered with Upspire in a small way over the last several years. What's worked so well, we made additional investments this last budget to say we want more individuals that have been formerly homeless to work for the City of Fort Worth. And then we guarantee them in an interview with the City of Fort Worth once they've gone through that process. This is a partnership in the long run, and this is the only way you can get somebody back on their feet, is making sure they have the dignity of work, to put money back in their pocket, put a roof over their head. At the same time, they're going through the services that they need to really be stable.
I wanted to ask you about jobs and the economy. You mentioned it before. This is a top 15 city in the United States and continues to grow.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, that's a balance, because at the same time you're attracting residents, you also need to attract jobs and manufacturing and whatever it is, corporate relocations. And you got a lot of competition within the state of Texas and even within the DFW area, because the northern suburbs, Collin and Denton counties are very big. You got Dallas County, obviously. And so how do you compete? And has the city made strides in that?
I know we have. I think, first of all, back to the Texas A&M announcement, this is a Tier 1 public university that will have a significant presence in Fort Worth. Before this announcement, Fort Worth is the largest big city in Texas that did not have the presence of a large Tier 1 public university in their city. Now, don't get me wrong, we are very proud to have TCU and Texas Wesleyan and an offshoot campus of UTA that have been great partners in Fort Worth. But this is a new significant investment. It matters. It correlates directly with jobs and the workforce of tomorrow. The number one thing that cities in Texas are really grappling with is, do they have the workforce? Are they really paying attention to workforce training for these jobs and opportunities in the future? And arguably the answer to this point has been no. In Tarrant County, only 23% of our students actually make it to a 2-year or 4-year credential after high school graduation. Compare that to 70% of the jobs require in North Texas some type of post-secondary credential. That was a crisis, but thankfully a lot of organizations, including the nonprofit I was incredibly proud to start, the Tarrant 2 and 3 Partnership, we started that work to understand what does it look like to make sure every single student in Fort Worth and Tarrant County has a pathway after high school to be into whether it be college, career, or military. This is about living wage, career stability, raising your family. This is not just about making minimum wage anymore. And we're paying attention to those things. And businesses are starting to understand, because you have to create the link between your K through 12 institutions, higher education, and workforce, and sometimes the bureaucracy has been difficult. When it comes to job creation, we also on the ground have companies we're incredibly proud of that continue to flourish. Lockheed, most recently the announcement for Bell, and the next generation helicopter and aerospace. And then you also think about the future of innovation and technology for transportation, like Hillwood's Mobility Innovation Zone and the companies that are relocating there. We made the announcement for MP Materials here in North Texas at Alliance, thanks to their hard work there with the Perot family. So all of these things are trending in the right direction. Remember, Jack, we also have available land. A lot of other communities can't say that. We're going to double the size of downtown with the Panther Island project, which we're incredibly excited about. We were proud to announce over $400 million in funding to help us dig the channel. You also can go west to Walsh Ranch and Ville Ranch, continue to see commercial and job location. Those 2 projects alone will see huge dividends for the city of Fort Worth, and we continue to work every day. And then our inner city continues to redevelop, and companies are starting to think differently about what it looks like to be in a place like Fort Worth that does have high quality of life, and also a city government that works for them rather than against them.
My last question to you is, are you expecting any major challengers?
As of right now, no, but you have to treat every challenger seriously, and just tell your story. Campaigning is not for the faint at heart. I'll remind you, there were 10 of us when I ran the first time down to a runoff. I learned a tremendous amount about our city and about myself, frankly, during that campaign cycle. But it does feel different to be an incumbent this time, to be able to tell the story of the hard work we've done over the last year and a half. It'll be 2 years when the election comes up. And so I'm optimistic about that. And I treated every single one of my opponents with respect. I know that we're all doing this for Fort Worth, and I'd hope the same would be if someone runs against me for mayor. You just got to tell your story, have your why, and I know that I can do that more successfully than anybody else.
Fort Worth Mayor Mattie Parker, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.